And last week I started a Christmas message, and like this message or series snuck up on me. I don't even know it's a series. It's just, I'm calling it Thrive Christmas. And last week I felt so good about that message. You know, sometimes when you preach, it kind of flows out easy, and then other times you know you're going to have a little fight as you share it. And that might be the case this morning as I talk to you about what I'm going to talk to you about. But last week was really encouraging to me, how the Lord wants to be incarnational in your life. He wants to come right into your business. I love that about him. He doesn't let you hide stuff. He's going to get right up in there, and he's going to talk to you about how he, coming into your life, can make you different. He can heal brokenness. He can bring hope and restoration. And yes, there's a big part of that is you stepping out and trusting and putting your hand in his hand. And So today's message is like a continuation off of that. So you hear the great announcement. And by the way, there's pageantry involved with that. You know, I talked about the production value that churches have. And I think, by the way, if you're going to really talk about production value, I know you wouldn't look at it like this in God, but I do. And I think it's kind of cool. God goes what we would consider overboard. Like he does things so well. When he, like I see these parents that are announcing the births of they conceived, or they're finding out the sex of the baby, and they're doing bigger and bigger things to reveal it, and I think it's wonderful. Well, how about having angels show up to the party, right? Hey, everybody! I mean, just and having wise men or magi come from what great distances away to worship this newborn king, and then to have people dreaming stuff. I mean, and then like you just think about what's going on currently in heaven, and just the display of majesty that's put on. And I know we don't think of it this way, but like in some ways, I think that we could never do enough in expressing our love to the Lord. And I'm not a creative, but when I see creativity, I get sparked. And I think this is why if you have a talent or you have a gift from the Lord, you ought to put it on display for him. Let him anoint what you do and take it. I happen to be looking on Facebook, and I saw Pastor Paul is an artist. I didn't even know. And he painted this thing, and I said to my wife, I said, that looks like Picasso. And then he posted something about it. I thought, that's pretty cool. But when you see a talent or a gift that somebody has go on display and it magnifies the Lord, like that's the heartbeat of what God does with everything he's doing to announce the birth of his son. And by the way, God's so good, he said it from the beginning. Way back in Genesis, he sent an indictment on the enemy. He said, you know what? There's going to be enmity between you and the woman's seed. And you're going to bruise his heel, but he's going to crush your head. And then all through the Bible, you'll see Jesus through the entire Bible. And I think it's profound. I was thinking of Isaiah chapter 7, when God announces Emmanuel. God's good. So, you can't outdo God. We would never outdo God. Look at how God created and painted the tapestry of creation. Can anybody in here, when you look upon a scene, like I love mountains, and I love being next to mountains. It's very humbling when you're standing next to something that's just massive, and then when there's snow covered at the peaks. And I love going to Colorado Springs for that purpose. You can be like right down at the base of the mountain. You see this beautiful mountain, and God did that, and so much more. Like I also, I was telling Amy this, I'm not liking the cold as much as I used to when I was younger. Man, bring on the snow, I'm cool. And now I'm like, if it snows, I'm going to be very upset. I'm going to be mad at Missouri because it snowed. And I think for those of you who love snow, God bless you. And there's some scenes that I've seen over the years and calendars with these beautiful snow, untouched, right? And God is so good, and He puts it all on display. So this came to me as I was praying about it, because the immediate aftermath of the declaration of Jesus coming, the Lord just kind of dropped this in my heart, and I've been talking about gaps a lot lately, but this came to my mind, minding the gap, living faithfully between the promise and fulfillment. So I'm going to challenge you with a message today that talks about the gaps in our lives. When God says something, or you become aware of something, or it's illuminated to you out of His Word, and there's an actual stirring in you of faith that you're like, this is going to happen. And then you're years down the road, and you're like, what happened to that? In fact, you might have even forgotten about it. We learned Zechariah was kind of in that mode. He had been praying for a baby, and they're advanced in age, and now all of a sudden they're being told your prayers are being answered. And he might have been thinking, when was the last time I prayed that prayer? Have you ever done that? Maybe you even forgot. Maybe he hadn't prayed it in years. But now he's being told, here it is. Your prayer's been answered. So when you hear words like mind the gap, you're being warned to pay attention to the space between the space that you're stepping through. It's not just a suggestion, it's a warning. Spiritually, the gap is the space between what God has promised and what we are presently experiencing. It's the place where faith has to be lived before outcomes are seen. And this is important. I don't make it a habit of reading my sermons, but I'm trying a new format of preaching. And I just think some things you need to hear, and it's really important you hear, that God has put you in charge. He's put you in charge of minding the gap. He'll come and He'll bring hope. He'll bring encouragement. He'll bring a charge of power into your life. And He says, now, I told you this is going to happen. Now there's going to be some responsibility on your part. And the space is not simply a delay or disappointment. It's formative. This is really important. And this is the crux of what the Lord put in my heart. It's a formative space. The gap often includes waiting. It includes resistance and uncertainty and pain. But it's never wasted time. God is shaping who we are becoming. And really, that's the heartbeat of Christianity. What are you becoming? It's not, I prayed a prayer and I'm just everything that I'm going to be right in that moment, and that it would be that simple. God, I come to you, I give my life to you, I surrender to you, and everything that you're going to be or supposed to be just happens instantaneous. Boy, that would be profoundly powerful, but that's not the way it is. Often, you go through processes that form you into what God wants you to be. And that, my friends, is the problem for us, because we often get discouraged during that process, or we get frustrated during that process, or we get angry during that process. There's lots of things that happen, and some very painful things. And often we forsake the holy in the middle of the hard. When we're going through difficult things, it just seems easy to abandon what God is saying to us. The gap, or here's the challenge, the gap will either shape you or harden you. God is always at work in the gap, but you have to walk through the gap. You have to get through it. We're called to mind the gap. Again, the gap is the space between what you are promised and what you are realizing. And there's a lot of things that go on in those places. And I wanted to just start by going to Matthew chapter 2. And I just want to read a portion of Scripture to you. That's the first book in the New Testament, by the way. Matthew chapter 2. And verse number 13. All right, verse number 13. It says, when they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, he said, take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. So he got up and took the child and his mother during the night and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. Make note of that. They stayed there until the death of Herod. Why is that important? Because Herod, in this instance, is the enemy. Remember, the wise men came and informed him that they came to worship this king of the Jews. This new king has been born. And he was inquiring of them, not so he could go and worship them like he said, but that he wanted to kill this new king. And I want to say to you that just because you hear the promise and you hear the good news, there's one thing that you and I need to recognize, is that when we experience some wonderful encounter with God that produces hope and faith and desire and expectation, it doesn't mean you're not going to face difficulties or an enemy. In fact, I think the more you experience those things, it's a greater indicator that you're on the right track with God. It can be frustrating. You hear God say something to you, He spoke to you, you're encouraged, and then you immediately face opposition. Why is that? Well, I think that opposition often is an incubator for God to bring about greater results that He'll get greater glory for. So the wonder of the announcement we talked about last week, Mary, she's this unknown girl in Nazareth who hears it. This beautiful thing is going to happen to her. And the Bible says she said, whatever you want. I love that about Mary. And then all the beautiful things she heard and saw, the Bible says she just treasured those things in her heart, pondering them, thinking on them. Joseph, a simple carpenter, is placed in a complicated situation, right? I mean, he's got a betrothed. He's got a woman that is going to be his wife, and then he finds out she's pregnant by the Holy Spirit. Like, I'm a pretty spiritual man, but that would be hard to accept. You're what? I've heard of some excuses. That is a pretty dramatic one. So God appears to him in a dream and tells him this is exactly right, that Mary's not lying. She's telling the truth. He was planning to put her aside, to divorce her quietly, so to bring no shame on her. He was an honorable man, but then the flip side of it is like God said, hey, this is true. And Joseph does what God tells him to do. I love that. The shepherds out in the field. And God appears to them. It's a wonderful announcement, right? God launches world-changing events through, most of the time, unnoticed people that are low in maybe status or people that would be marginalized or overlooked by most people. God says, I'm gonna bring wonderful change through you, and then you have to walk it out. And it's one of those things that the Lord says in His Word. He chooses the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. People who walk around thinking that they're the cat's meow, or they're the God has to use me. Look at how gifted I am. Look at how whatever I am. And then God says, hey, I choose to use foolish and lowly things so that everybody knows I get the glory. It's shameful when you know where you come from and you don't give God proper glory, and you start testing by taking glory that belongs to God. You begin to test God, because God says, listen, He's not going to be mocked. God isn't going to be mocked. He's a jealous God for His glory. He won't share it with anybody. and how we can sometimes take on stuff that really belongs to God. But really, God launches world-changing stuff through ordinary people. Are you ordinary? I know, you've probably been telling yourself for a long time, or you've had, I always go back to this, but when was it American Idol first came out, and like Simon used to brutalize people up, and I'm like, my mom said I can sing. Oh, great, let's hear it. And you're like, you've been lied to. Right? And the truth is I think that we can sometimes start to believe our own press on stuff. And I'm not here to discourage you or to put you down, or we shouldn't walk around whipping ourselves all the time. Oh, you're a lowly scum. You should just, forsake it all. No, that's not how I'm talking about it. But when you start believing the press, you get yourself into trouble. God uses ordinary people to launch great things. I love that. When you see missionaries going around the world, or you see some kid that comes out of a really broken place, and God uses them to heal people and to help people be free, and he'll call pastors and ministry-oriented people and business owners, and he just does amazing stuff through ordinary people. I want you to know this about God, that he'll often find a person. He'll make it personal to you. God promises land personally before they become global. God promises that he's going to do something in your heart personally. He says to Mary, you will conceive. He will save his people. For unto you is born. Like there's this really great expectation that God's going to personally do something in you. And this is part of the Christmas story. And this is why I brought out the incarnational position of God, because he's got something for you. You. And maybe you've had the crud kicked out of you in your life. Maybe you've experienced pain on top of pain on top of pain. And the enemy's convinced you that you can't do anything. I want you to know something. God does more with nothing than anybody else can. In fact, you can't do anything with nothing, but God can do something with nothing. Don't underestimate what God plans privately before he reveals it publicly. Because I want you to know something. Before you're ever elevated publicly, there has to be something private that happens in your life. I meet people all the time that want to go from they want the prison to the penthouse right away. Read the story of Joseph. Get a grand dream. It's the penthouse for me, baby. What? I'm being sold into slavery? I go to jail for something I didn't do? They forget about me in here? What makes you think that God's just he's got to turn around? Like we turn around, we'll turn this project around in 24 hours. We live in the Western culture. We want everything immediately. I want to take this to you today. In fact, if you could give it to me today, it'd be fantastic. But look at all the great things that we have in life, all the precious metals and stones and all those things. You got to dig for those things. You got to go deep for those things. It's funny. I was telling my son about that. I think there's that diamond field in Arkansas. They're like, let's go down and find them. I was like, yeah, if it was that easy, everybody would have already done it. Right? I'm going to go find that diamond. It's going to be a big diamond. And we want everything now. Immediately, give it to me. So God promises land personally before they become global. Before anything ever happens in public, he's first dealing with you in private. His announcement bursts expectation. I think this is a holy moment. Expectation. When God gives you something that you begin to believe for. It's a holy moment between you and God. An expectation must be formed and anchored. You cannot just expect things all the time. I know this to be true, and I'm telling you, I've been in ministry long enough to experience this. People walk around with all kinds of expectations that aren't anchored to truth. It's usually found in the form of, oh, I'm going to give my heart to Jesus, and he's going to make my life totally 100% better, and I'm going to be rich, and I'm going to, and that's our culture. And I'm not saying God isn't going to bless you with prosperity, and it's God who gives the wisdom to get wealth, but can I tell you something? It's just not that easy, and your hope, your expectation has to be anchored to God. You have to find truth, and you have to anchor your expectations there. Otherwise, expectations minus realization equals frustration, which equals anger, which equals rage, wrath. There's nothing worse than somebody who believes God owes them something, and they just walk around ticked off all the time. And I wish I could use the word I really wanted to use there, because it really describes a lot of Christians. And by the way, I was listening to, I don't think he's a believer by any stretch. I think it's Dick Van Dyke, 100 years old. And he was talking like, what is the secret? He goes, oh, you don't want to hear. And he says, you know what? My dad, who lived to be 74, and I was like, 74? You know, I mean, that's young still, right? But 74, he said he walked around all the time with just a thing inside his gut, like he was just angry. And I was listening to him talk, and he says, he was harboring like an unforgiveness. And he said, you know, that affects you. And he said, at 100, I just have not been able. He says, there's people I don't like. Don't look around. There's people I don't like. He says, but I've never allowed it to rise to the level of hate. He said, hate and anger, they riddle the body with sickness and disease. I was like, wow. God says that in his word. Oh, yeah. Proverbs 13:12 says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. But a desire fulfilled brings life. God delights in answering our desires, especially when we're stayed on him. When we're focused on him, he'll answer desire. Why? Because it's life-giving. Whew. What is your expectation anchored to? And a non-anchored expectation will lead to a weary heart. You'll be frustrated with God, frustrated with everybody. In fact, it'll turn into anger towards God, and it'll turn to a criticism of God. Expectation untethered disappoints. Expectation anchored in God brings hope. When expectations are tied to timing and outcomes or circumstances, it will disappoint. When expectation is anchored in God's character and faithfulness, it sustains the soul. So good. So what happens? I am way behind. So let me catch up. The painful gap. What happens when it doesn't go the way you expect? That's a hard one. And I promise you, I've been in my quiet, silent moments, been talking with God about this very issue. First of all, I think if you start out with the mindset that you're looking for fairness, like for me personally, this is an issue. In fact, I sat with a coach recently, and I was talking about this, like how I just felt like I've had my fair share of this pain. Well, by the way, I want to say this to you while I'm thinking of it. Like, we always think ours is the worst. I don't know what all of you have been through. I don't know the pain that you've experienced in your life, but when you begin to harbor that towards God, when you begin to feel like you're being treated unjustly, which is how I was getting like 30 years of ministry. Why is this happening? Why is that happening? And God just says, hey, I'm here. Listen to what happens. Like, to me, this is so profound. God announces this beautiful birth of his son, and he makes it come to be. Remember, he prophesied it back in Isaiah's day, and like all the way from the beginning, it was told it was going to happen. But Isaiah, he says, Emmanuel, God's going to come. He's going to be with his people. He's going to give birth to a son from a virgin. He announces it way before it happens, and then all the pageantry and making it happen, and then all hell breaks loose. What do I mean? Well, God warns Joseph in a dream, get up. It's urgent. Get up. And by the way, I know how it is to travel with little babies. And for some reason, they always know when you're about a half hour to 45 minutes from where you're getting. And they begin to just go crazy. I got a video footage of one of my children who were named nameless. We were traveling from here over to Nashville, and we were about 30 to 45 minutes out. And it was like, Now, picture that out in the elements. Walking. The angel warns Joseph. The Holy Family becomes refugees. Herod orders genocide. Like, this is all happening, and yet everything else is still true. This is Jesus. He is the Christ. He's the Messiah. Wouldn't you think that Mary and Joseph would be thinking, hey, like, thank God we got the Son. Easy road. But no, this is how, I want you to, this is a principle. I think you can write it down as a principle. The enemy always brings opposition to something that is in its infancy. Like, if he can't get to it before, he'll try to trouble you, bring pain to your life when you're in the process of growing something. Something has been given birth in you and you're excited about it. The enemy doesn't want that to succeed. Are you with me this morning? You're really quiet. I'm seeing some heads nod, which is really good, but maybe you're experiencing what I'm talking about. Maybe the contrast is jarring to you. Like, God said this. Why am I going through this then? If God said, why am I experiencing this? And I have to tell you, that's the hardest question for me. I don't even try answering why anymore. It's not for me to answer. No, I want you to answer. Listen, I appreciate it, and I can see some things that I might think in this situation, but I'm not God, and I don't understand, and I can't control it, and I can't take it away. I don't even know that I would take it away, but that's been part of my problem in ministry, is I'm always trying to take people's stuff. Now, this is going to land hard. You have to deal with your own stuff. Oh, that's hard. You can choose how you deal with it. You can choose to not do it alone. You could choose not to do it at all. But the reality is, if you want to do anything for God at all, the opposition is going to be there. And it's going to be really hard, and it's going to be jarring. There's going to be times. I mean, think about this. Babies are dying. All the males under the age of 2 and under, are being killed. Tell me that's painful. I know in a time where people want that to just be a choice and to just like discard babies from the womb, there's people who want children. And when they get children, to have somebody come through and rip them from your arms and murder them, you go from angels singing to babies dying. Glory in the heaven to grief on earth. Promise declared to punished or to pain unleashed. Good news does not eliminate spiritual opposition. It often awakens it. Pain does not invalidate God's promise. The Messiah is still preserved. God is still directing in the story. The darkness does not win. N.T. Wright says Christmas is not a sentimental escape from reality, but the invasion of God into the darkest corners of it. God comes in the middle of darkness to bring hope. Some of the deepest pain in your life arrived right after the greatest promise. So how do you mind the gap? Minding the gap, being faithful in the holy and the hard. The Lord put it to me like this: you got to mind your actions, your attitudes, and your words, and you got to watch your heart. Minding your actions. Joseph arose quickly and took the child by night. He did not wait. He immediately obeyed God. And I want to say this to you: one of the quickest ways to overcome the enemy's opposition is to obey God instantly. Whatever he says to you, do what he says. Don't allow yourself to talk yourself out of what God has asked you to do. Instant obedience. And I know, like I read this book, Forever Ruined on the Ordinary by Joy Dawson, and I thought there's no human that could live up to this kind of expectation. But Joy Dawson was a giant in the faith. Can I say this to you? Like, we have made obedience optional. We have made obedience optional. Trust me, when you're parenting teenagers, you recognize it immediately. When they think obedience is optional. It's a choice. No, I didn't say that was a choice. I asked you to do X, Y, Z. Oh, I didn't know you meant to do that now, or I thought you meant when I got around to it, or if I thought my room was dirtier than, well, it's not dirty. No, it is dirty. It's not clean. There's food in there. We said don't ever take food in there, and there's food in there. Not just one of them, all of them. Like I noticed the kids' Halloween bags this year. They were sitting there, and they had candy in them, and we were just picking at it. And then you go into their rooms, and you look under the bed, and you're like, whoa. They're walking around like, I haven't been eating any candy. And you find a mountain of wrappers, and you realize, oh, they've been eating candy. They've been disobedient is what they've been doing. And they knew exactly what they were doing because they got that grin on their face. Obey God. Mary treasured these things. She was in active stewardship of what God was speaking to her. And by the way, this is a really important thing for Christians in the house this morning. If God is speaking to you, treasure those things. Write them down. When somebody speaks to you in the name of the Lord and they say, here's a word from the Lord, write it down. I remember I was talking to Pastor Paul when I first got here. He reached out to me and we were talking, and he shared a vision that God gave about this property. And I was stoked, man. I was like that, and it hasn't left me. I treasured it. I write it down, and I believe that God's going to make it happen. And he's already started that process. But I want you to know something. When God speaks to you, don't treat it flippantly. Treasure it. Think on it. There's things that I've been chewing on for decades. Don't let your memory or your lack of memory. If I don't write it down lately, I'm like, oh, Lord, have mercy. Thank God that he's speaking to you. Thank God that he's giving you direction. Thank God that, like Mary, you can treasure what he's saying. Don't forget to glorify him and worship him in the middle of your struggle. When life hits, don't react. Respond. Don't drift. Decide. Make a decision. I am not going to come untethered. I'm going to stay anchored to Christ. He is my hope. Don't wait for the perfect feelings. Move in faithful obedience. Obedience in the gap often looks like small steps, not big moments. And friends, don't underestimate just taking small movements in Him. Small movements. What could God do in those small moments? When you trust Him, you step out and you move. That's minding your actions, mind your attitude. You can't stop the storm, but you can set the internal thermostat. You can change exchange grumbling for gratitude, fear for faith, suspicion for trust. You choose the atmosphere of your soul. You do. You can blame everybody else for why you are the way you are. I'm so angry because. I'm so this because. Or you can self-regulate. You can look in the mirror and you can say, Chris, you're letting this happen. It doesn't mean that your feelings and emotions are necessarily wrong. We learned a few weeks ago that they're basically not good or bad. It's what you do with them that makes the difference. Remember, I've said this before, your attitude determines your altitude. That's a saying of leadership. I also think your attitude determines your aptitude. I can't learn. No, you change your attitude. It'll often make you understand things that you never understood. Your attitude won't remove the pain, but it will determine how you walk through it. Minding your words. Proverbs 18:21 says your tongue has the power of life and death. Words frame your reality while you wait. Words can either reinforce the grief and the pain or reinforce the promise. Speak blessing even when you feel broken. Speak hope even when you feel hollow. Oh my goodness. Sometimes you got to look in the mirror and just say things that you don't even think you believe at that point. Make your tongue speak life. It's so important. It's that powerful. You don't realize what your words are doing to you, whether you're saying them out loud or whether they're in your head, beating down your life. You determine whether you're going to follow God in life or death. You determine. Your mouth is either a microphone for heaven or an amplifier for hell. You don't have a choice. There's no in between. You're either advocating heavenly stuff, powerful stuff, life-giving stuff, or you're amplifying what the enemy is saying. You don't have the choice. It's either or. Finally, watch your heart. Proverbs 4 admonishes us to guard our heart. For out of it flow all the issues of life. The gap is where bitterness tries to grow. You delay can harden your heart. Disappointment can sour your spirit. Misinterpretation of God can erode trust. When you allow your heart to wander when you're going through pain and hard times, it will lead you every time towards offense towards God. You're going to be like offended by what He does. Jesus said, man, blessed is the one who doesn't get offended by me. Why? Because He doesn't move on your timetable. He doesn't think the way you think. His ways are higher than your ways. There's constant opportunity for you to be offended by what God is doing in your life. That's why He says, watch your heart, son. I've been so careful of this lately. When something gets to me and it starts to make me feel a certain way, or I'm kind of like, ugh, I don't like that, I stop and I invite God into the situation. God, why am I feeling this way? I don't get it. And then He talks with me about it. And when I can't seem to get to that answer, I go to people I trust and I say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me understand this? Maybe you got some insight that can bring freedom to me in this or bring peace. Maybe you got something you could say, am I really this way? Have I acted this way? Is there something I'm saying or doing that would reveal what's really going on? I don't trust my heart. That's why I guard it. I watch it. And I bring every word, every thought, every action, I bring it to the tip of the spear and I subject it in obedience to Christ. I'm not perfect at it. Sometimes I say and do stupid things. None of you do. You look at me as your example today. Guard your heart. God is deepening your roots. The hidden work that nobody sees, the formation that's happening, the maturity that's happening. God is developing in you a spiritual strength that you knew you would have never known had you not gone through the pressure that follows the promise. The enemy wants to use the gap to harden your heart. God wants to use the gap to deepen you. Problem is most of us don't want to experience that process. You could stay shallow. You could be a mile wide and an inch deep. And you could even be used by God that way. But there's something that shifts in you when you say, God, I am ready to go deeper. And I know it's going to have great promise and hope attached to it, but I also know that I'm getting ready to experience some challenges, some pain. You have to put that faith muscle under pressure, under tension, so that I can grow. I don't want to necessarily experience that, but I don't know any other way to go deeper. So what do you do when you don't have the wind to your back? You don't have that feeling that inspires you to move. There's no obvious evidence that is going to happen. There's no real encouragement to keep on pushing on. Well, I want to say something to American Christians today. When there's no wind, start rowing. When you don't have the wind in your sails and you're wondering if it's ever going to happen, just get busy rowing. And eventually the wind of the Spirit is going to begin to blow across your life. Because God is faithful. When He makes a promise, He fulfills His promises. And they're not like God forgets His promises, and it's not that God is slow in keeping His promises. He's just not on your timetable. And He's not slow. He knows when to deliver them. I don't know if you've noticed this, but for me, I think we're going deeper. And if you want to go deeper, plan and prepare that challenges are going to press in on you. You got to mind the gap. I'm going to pray over us. Pastor Paul's going to come and close us out. Father, I thank you for your word today. I feel it deep inside. This beautiful truth that you announced your Son and you decorated, you brought out all the bells and the whistles to let everybody know that Jesus is here. And then the people that you announced these things to, and you made people move and come towards the Son. And as they trust you and they put their hope in you, they have faced immediate suffering. I pray if there's anybody in this room today who is struggling with that very thing, I want to believe again. I want to have hope. I want to know that what God has said to me is going to come to pass. I pray, God, they wouldn't lose hope in you. that they would anchor their hope and their trust in you. Bless your people this morning. Pour out your Spirit on them. I pray this Christmas season would be one of great hope and great joy, peace on earth. Where their hearts have been raging or their minds have been just going nuts, I pray that you would calm them and that the peace of God that transcends all understanding envelope them today. Anybody in this room who's exhausted from fighting the good fight, I pray today you would just encourage them to keep on going, because you're going to bring about what you promised. I pray your blessing and your touch upon us today. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.